The upcoming G20 summit in New Delhi, apart from driving a consensus on issues of global importance, will also give India a chance to showcase its cultural heritage and diversity. Cultural events, retreat for spouses of G20 leaders are on the cards as well. I spoke with G20's Chief Coordinator Shringla earlier today. He told me the preparation for the summit began long ago with extreme attention to detail for an event of this scale. We also talked about India's key agenda, the preparation and consensus on the communique. Here's that conversation. Could you give us a sense as to how many foreign visitors are actually going to come to Delhi between the 7th and 10th of September?
Well, it's, in terms of a very rough ballpark figure, we could expect anything from between, I would say, 8 to 10,000 people coming in during this period. It could be more, it could be slightly less, but very roughly we would have a very large influx of our foreign guests who would be coming in for the summit. They're not just the leaders and the delegations, there's also the international media. There is a very large support group that comes in with every head of state and government. And I think we have certainly factored in all of these different components of visitors who would come into our country, made sure that the reception they receive, the welcome they receive, the exposure that they would have in the short time that they would spend in our country would be appropriate and would be very, very sound. We intend to fully live up to the Prime Minister's vision of an impeccable and uniquely Indian presidency and G20 summit.
One thing that immediately comes to one's mind when you speak about 10,000 foreign visitors, heads of state, VVIPs, foreign ministers, finance ministers, is where are you going to put them up, Ambassador Shringla? Limited number of five-star hotel capacity in the capital. So how are you making room for these large delegations?
I think provision was made well in advance, and there's obviously every delegation has made their bookings into a hotel of their choice. You may not fit all delegations within Delhi. You might have to go to other parts of the NCR. But I think all delegations have been satisfactorily booked. And I think the experience wherever you are in our national capital region will be a great one.
In terms of the experience we want to give them, could you give us a sense of the cultural experience, the cuisine experience that we're going to give the leaders? There's been a lot of focus on showcasing the one district, one product scheme. So when the leaders are heading back to their respective countries, are they going to be given specific products or any kind of special mementos that have been thought about as well?
So I think on a very broad level, every G20 meeting has been an opportunity for us to showcase not only our developmental achievements, but also our rich cultural heritage and diversity, our tourism potential. And undoubtedly the summit will present the highest opportunity to do so. So whether it's your technological prowess, whether it is your, as you mentioned, your unique products in terms of your, handicrafts, in terms of your cultural artifacts, I'm sure there would be ample opportunity to
impact our agenda going forward. There have been previous meetings where we could not find consensus on the communique because of the differences on the war. Is there any sign that those differences may be on the back burner and we may find a communique?
So, to be honest, I'm not the right person to answer that question for the simple reason that I don't deal with that on a regular basis. But you have had interviews with others, and I'm sure they can give you a better sense of where that is. The important thing is, I think the deliberations so far have been very, very substantive. All of our G20 partners have contributed very actively towards, I would say, having outcomes that can impact, as I said, positively on the rest of the world. They have understood or an emerging economy to use the G20 platform for the global common good, and our concept of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, one earth, one family, one future, to promote cooperation.
Right, but are you trying to make sure that the Ukraine-Russia war does not somehow derail the larger conversation at the summit?
What we are saying is that in today's context, you have a fairly troubled global order. I mean, you've had, one of the worst, most difficult crises in the form of the global, COVID-19 pandemic. You have an ongoing Ukraine and development. They've set back the SDG process. They've impacted adversely on your efforts towards climate change. It's the developing world, the global south that has borne the brunt of this, whether it is through, if you can see it in the form of indebtedness, that a very large number of, the impact on the developing world has been very significant. And so the G20 as a group has a certain responsibility to be able to contribute in terms of macroeconomic and financial stability, but also in terms of the real needs of the Global South. And I think when we engage the Global South through the Voice of Global South Summit that we held well before our presidency began, many of those views and concerns and expectations of our G20 presidency were articulated by our partners in the Global South, and those have been more than amply, I think, internalized in the G20 process under our presidency. Right. So if you look at our broad priorities, we have reflected the priorities of the Global South and the rest of the world. So when we are chairing the G20, and it is a unique opportunity, we don't speak just for ourselves or our G20 partners, we speak for the entire world. And so the changes that we're trying to bring about through the G20 process should impact the world. So when you look at one Earth, one family, one future, we're saying that what can we do to make it a better global order? Can we not create a new order, new global order that is based more on global collaborations than conflict? Right. One that can address many of the issues that countries face today. Yeah. And the G20 is the best platform to be able to provide that redressal.
Okay. Now, coming to the issue of our core agenda, give us a sense of our priorities, the Prime Minister's priorities during those 3 days.
So, as I said, I mean, our effort will be to look at not only issues that are important to the G20, but the rest of the world. From that point of view, we are looking at what can we do to provide momentum to the SDG process. Sustainable development goals are important for the world, but especially important for the Global South, because socioeconomic development is critical in terms of growth indices. Already in the halfway point to the SDG process, we are seeing it faltering as a result of some of the extraneous developments that have nothing to do with the Global South. We are also looking at how we can use or we can foster digital transformations through digital public infrastructure. How can we use our experience and our expertise in promoting greater inclusivity and enabling states to empower their own people? The Prime Minister pointed out that there are 3 billion people in the world who don't have access to identity cards. There are 1 billion people without bank accounts. How can we use digital technology to provide solutions to some of these problems? We are also looking at environmental issues. Climate change, for example, has been greatly affected by the recent crises. How can we promote our philosophy of lifestyle for sustainable development and the environment to bring about a pro-planet movement? Right. So every individual does his part to alleviating that inexorable move towards global warming. It is not enough to initiate climate actions alone. Yeah. What can we do to foster a circular economy? Banks to strengthen their mandate, not only to address the issues of indebtedness and the demands on their own ability to provide relief to developing countries, but also in terms of providing climate financing. How can you support these countries in the transition towards a greener, cleaner future? Indebtedness really narrows the fiscal space that is important for investments in the SDG sector. You have to support that process. Otherwise, that entire process of climate change and environmental action basis.
You've mentioned all our priorities, but areas where we will definitely see consensus, substantive outcomes that will emerge that Brazil and the G20 will be able to build on going forward. The three top areas where we have consensus.
So we have taken a number of initiatives that are unique. I mean, if you look at the fact that we have introduced for the first time a disaster reduction relief group, a DRR working group. I think that is very important from the point of view of many countries across the world. We have introduced a Startup 20, which is again critical for technology and technological development, mainly fostered through the youth. We have also introduced for the first time, got the G20 to deliberate on cybersecurity and issues that are again new to the process. We have also looked at how we can provide global governance for new and emerging technologies, whether it's responsible artificial intelligence, whether it is cryptocurrencies. How can we create an international governing structure that all countries can be a part of and adhere to? So these are the initiatives that are important, and ones that I think would not only leave our imprint on the G20 process, but would go on, as you said, to Brazil and South Africa, and that process would continue. So our narrative on the global agenda, which is whether it is through our philosophy of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, human-centric globalization, whether it is Maharishi working on billets and other ancient grains, which is lifestyle for environment, which is on the environmental sector. These are the priorities that we see.
Ambassador Shringla, thank you very much for speaking to CNBC-TV18 about
Absolute pleasure.
G20 priorities and what we can expect on the 9th and 10th of September. All right, that was Harshvardhan Shringla, the Chief Coordinator for India's G20 presidency. But the discussions on the declaration, the chair summary, they're all in the final stage. So it will be a lot of news next week, and keep tuning in to CNBC-TV18 for the latest updates on the G20 Leaders Summit. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of Global Eye. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.